Today we're going to be talking about a subject that is very near and dear to everyone's heart when you have to have your vehicle emissioned.
I don't know if that's near and dear to anybody's heart. I think everybody's a big pain in their
Well,
butt.
I said that in jest, of course, because, sitting in line for hours or whatever it takes to go through emissions. But,
Yeah.
you know,
That's
first,
changed over the years too, Glenn, right?
It
Let's face it, we've got
totally
all this
has.
electronic stuff on there now. They used to stick the little sniffer in the tailpipe, and they used to test for the
They put you on the
CAOHCs.
dynamometer and you had to
Yeah.
spin, they had to drive your car for you and spin the wheels and, test all that stuff. And if you failed by 1/100th of a point, you were screwed.
Yeah, and
Back to
that's-
the drawing board.
Back to the drawing board, and you got to go in and get it adjusted or do whatever you got to do to get it through. And now with OBD2 computers, they don't do that anymore. They just plug a little scan tool into the data link port.
Right.
And see if there's any codes in there and make sure that all the monitors have a run. See, that's the thing a lot of people don't understand, and we run into this a lot. They will go down to emissions, and sometimes they will have no check engine light on, but all the monitors have not ran.
Correct.
And when the monitors don't run, they won't pass you. I think you can have one or some cars one and some cars two, right?
Pre-2000s are all but two of the monitors. So if there's 7, you have to run at least 5, or if there's 6, you have to run at least 4. Every car was designed a little bit differently. So
Yeah.
when we put our scan tool on there, it shows us how many monitors there are on the vehicle. But in Arizona, at least, it's all but one. So if you haven't run your evaporative emissions or whatever. So the first thing to remember, first and foremost, is, people call all the time on the phone and say, hey, do you guys do emission testing? And, of course, they're probably from out of state, because if they're from Arizona,
Right.
they know
We get that call a lot too.
that, that we don't do emissions testing. But we can at least look at their car and, plug in an inexpensive scan tool and just see how many monitors are run, tell them it's good.
See if there's any codes.
Yeah, because what oftentimes happens is someone does hook up a cheap scan tool and they erase all the codes, and then they haven't run enough monitors. So, well, my check engine light's not on, so I guess I'm good to go. They may not be, because maybe all the monitors haven't run. And to run monitors on a vehicle, you have to drive the vehicle at a certain speed for a certain amount of time and under certain conditions.
Yeah,
to
getting
make
the
those
monitors on some cars is a real pain in the
It's,
butt. But as you alluded to, I want to share something with our listeners.
Okay.
Is that this is an emissions testing station. See, what you said earlier was a lot of times people call up and say, hey, can you test for my emissions? Well, they think if they came from another, like California, for instance, the shops can actually test
Right.
their emissions.
Yep.
Well, here in Arizona, that's not the case. You have to go through a certified emissions testing station, and they're kind of all over the valley. You can find them when you go on Google. You can find them.
East Valley, West Valley, Central Phoenix, wherever you happen to be, there's testing stations all over the place.
Right. So, what are some of the reasons why people fail?
Well, sometimes they may just have a loose gas cap, and even though it may not have thrown a code yet, that monitor won't run or can't run. And after a certain amount of failures, it will turn on the check engine light. So sometimes you get lucky, you left your gas cap loose, you made it through emissions, and God bless you, But oftentimes when that car is turned off and on a certain number of what we call key cycles determine how many times the car has been shut off and turned back on. Well, after a certain number of key cycles, for some manufacturers it's 4, sometimes it's 7 key cycles before that monitor will actually say, okay, I'm tired of looking at this thing, it's not working, I'm going to turn the check engine
We got
light
some
on.
images up here of why people fail. Well,
Tell
seems
us
to be a
what's
little bit-
missing, Dave.
Seems to be a little bit of a problem in today's world is people are stealing catalytic converters.
There you go.
So somebody decided to
Meow. The
hack that off.
cat's missing.
Yeah, the cat is gone. No more 9 lives.
Go down to your local dog catcher and find out if your cat happens to be there.
It's unfortunate that this is happening, but it is happening, and people are taking the catalytic converters because of the precious metals inside of the
So why
converter.
wouldn't this car pass emissions?
Well, first of all, the catalytic converter is not there, and the catalytic converter is what we call. I always describe it to my clients as it's like an incinerator. It burns all of the unburned gases that are coming from the engine, so it comes out cleaner out the tailpipe.
So what happens if you start your car in the morning and it goes like that?
You got a big problem. And back in the day, back in the 60s and 70s and 80s, we used to like that noise. Now it's not a pleasant noise
Right.
at all.
Well, part of your exhaust system is missing is what happens. They cut that off. And actually, those catalytic converters, even a used one off of your vehicle, can bring $400 or $500 to a thief.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate. That's been a kind of...
And to replace it can be $1,200, $1,800, $2,000 or more, depending on how much of the system they stole, right?
Right, and one of the things that we share with our clients is sometimes buying a cheap converter and putting in there doesn't work.
Correct.
We've actually had customers that went out and got a cheap converter, put it in the car, and the check engine light stayed on because the computer doesn't recognize or doesn't like the way that converter.
It's not burning out enough of the emissions, and you have
Right.
oxygen sensors that monitor that catalytic converter, and so, without the right amount of precious metals in there, which are palladium, rhodium, and platinum,
They don't burn as efficient as they're supposed to.
That's
the problem.
correct. And so they're cheaper because they're cheaper. There's less of the precious metals. And just to give you an idea, the precious metals in a catalytic converter, palladium and rhodium are like $18,000 an ounce. Now, they only put trace amounts in there, but it's ridiculous. If you look on the price of precious metals, and you look up palladium and rhodium, platinum is even more than gold, but I mean, this is 18 times more than gold. And so that's why they steal them, and they can cash them in, and someone melts them down and gets the precious metals back out of them. But
Well, the important thing is that you make sure that you have a discussion with your auto repair professional to make sure that they put the right catalytic converter in there. Because even if they get you through emissions with a cheaper converter this time, but next year or 2 years from now, you're going to have the same problem again.
yeah,
We had
a problem with the late model Chevrolet. The guy insisted that we put an aftermarket catalytic converter on, and I drove that car for 3 days, and I get it just a hair close to passing, and boom, the check engine light would come on for catalytic converter efficiency. We ended up putting a brand new OE cat on the thing, and it fixed the problem. I was able to run the monitors within minutes. And
It's
it was
amazing.
it's a done deal.
We've ran in that before where the monitor wouldn't run because the converter wasn't the correct converter.
Yeah, they set the parameters on the computer in the car so tight so that, if you use something that's not original equipment, it's not going to work, which is why buying parts at the local auto parts store, and it's a cheap part, and it doesn't have the same capacities and
And it won't
resistance
last.
values and voltage values, you're going to end up in a bad spot.
Yeah, you want them to last, obviously. So what else? What are the reasons why? Oh, what are we seeing here?
Well, I'm seeing a little orange picture in the middle of this guy's speedometer, and it looks kind of like a submarine with a propeller in the front and back and the top.
What it's designed to look like is a check engine light to let you know that you have a problem. Your computer right now has picked up a problem, and it's decided to let you know that the computer doesn't like something.
Right. Well, some of the first models that came out actually had a red light that came out that said service engine soon, then they made it yellow, and then they came out with one that says check engine, and that was also orange or yellow. And now
I like pictures way better. What about you?
Well, they've made yeah, picture is worth 1,000 words, right? In this case, it's very simple. Now that they've all gone to this thing, but some of them now have warning systems. Actually, it says, check your gas cap, or it tells
They're more
you,
specific.
or it tells you
Yeah.
check engine or service.
They keep
service
on putting
stuff.
more and more codes on there and more ways for self-diagnostics for the computer to self-diagnose. But yeah, that check engine light there, and with that light on, do you think they're going to pass emissions?
Not in a heartbeat. Not in a lifetime. So
Nope.
you need to have someone look at it, and so
It could be something as simple, and the car doesn't necessarily have to run bad.
Right.
In order for that, when that light's on, doesn't make the car run bad. It could be something
Absolutely.
part of the evap system, like you alluded to earlier with talking about a gas cap. A gas cap can cause that light to come on.
Absolutely. And we found with charging systems that even alternators that are overcharging or undercharging, the computer's looking for a certain amount of voltage, they will turn the check engine light on. So it may not be emissions related at all, but with that light on, you're not getting 3 emissions.
When you were talking about too much voltage or not enough voltage, it's
Exactly. That's the whole vehicle is operated on the systems that are guided and operated by voltage.
Yeah,
so
it's
if
like
it's
if
too
you-
high or too low, it's gonna turn the check engine light on because the components aren't able to function in their full capacity.
Yeah, it's just like sending too much electricity or not enough electricity to your PC. How well do you think that's going to work?
It doesn't
Not
work
gonna-
out very well.
Not going to work out very well. So yeah, that's if you notice that light's coming on in the dash, you're probably going to fail emissions. Well, not probably. You are going to fail emissions.
Exactly.
You're going to go down there. They're going to find some codes in there, and then what's going to happen is you're going to have to go to an auto professional
Right.
and have them look at it to see what those codes actually mean and get that $7,000 or $8,000 stamp
Right, so
you
now
talked
you
about
waited
earlier.
in line for an hour. You thought maybe I can sneak by, and they find something in there that was unexpected or whatever. But the bottom line is they can't tell you what's wrong with their car.
Nope.
They're going to send you to a facility, so you get a free pass the first time. Second time you're going to pay the fee, and the third time's a free pass again. So take it to a professional, have them look at, check it out, and repair the problem.
Right. So if you fail the first time, you can go back a second time for free.
Right.
And the third time you have to pay.
That's
correct?
correct, yeah.
Okay.
Free pass the second time.
Yeah, free pass the
Yeah,
second time.
yeah.
Okay. Just want to make sure we were
Oh, you
explaining
pay,
that right.
Yeah, you pay the first time.
Yeah, you pay the first time, the second time is free, and then the third time you have to pay again.
Yeah, and if you fail too many times within a certain period of time, they make you go to a special inspection, and it's a real pain in the neck. So the idea is to get it fixed as quickly as you can.
Right.
Yeah.
And you can help them with that, your shop, and I know we do it all the time. We can help all, and we part of the vehicle emissions repair program.
Right.
And the state will pay up to $900 to get your car through emissions.
Exactly. So if you're not taking advantage of someone, and you don't have to show that you're on food stamps or anything.
Nope.
Anybody can do it.
Anybody can do it. It's a grant.
And it's foolish not to take advantage of that program if it's, when it's available to you.
Absolutely. It's a good program. And if any of you listeners out there have any questions about that, you can definitely Facebook us or email us, and we'll definitely give you more information
Yeah,
on
and
that.
what we think about the government not wanting to, it's just another thing for the man. Really, this is the government helping you, they want your car to pass emissions. They want to reduce, the pollution in our system.
Absolutely. That's what it is. It's a Clean Air Act. Hey, Glenn, you were alluding to the gas cap being a problem that could cause you to fail emissions. Well, this one doesn't have a gas cap.
It doesn't. It's called a capless one, and I think Ford was one of the first companies to start using those.
I have a Ford Flex that has that exact same setup.
Yeah, and my daughter's Escape has got it, and I got a couple Fusions that have it in my rental fleet.
Yeah, but this one here's got a little bit of a problem. It's got a crack in the bottom of it there. Do you see that?
It does indeed.
And that's where, if you get a little bit too aggressive putting the nozzle into the tank, it can cause it to crack that.
Absolutely. That, and just the fact that, age and time, and it's made out of plastic, which is really a bad idea. It may be polyethylene or whatever it is, but
Yeah.
over a period of time, like you said, they can get brittle in the cold, and you hit it with the nozzle.
And what kind of problem
or
can this cause?
you're leaning on the nozzle while you're talking to your girlfriend or whatever you're doing. There are different things that can cause it. If you're careful about putting it in, and it has a flap in it, and it's a spring-loaded flap, and sometimes the gasket doesn't seat right over a period of uses, or you get the nozzle and they're crooked and you kind of twist that thing sideways, it can also create a leak.
What's its main job?
The main job is to keep pressure inside of the fuel tank and not let fumes escape out into the atmosphere. So it's an emissions thing.
Well, absolutely, and because they have evap tests that run, one of the monitors is a evap test, right?
Yes.
And what it does is it either creates a vacuum or creates pressure, and makes it so the fumes aren't vented into the air, which is obviously a hazardous thing. And
you add that by millions of vehicles. We have over 300 million vehicles in the United States. So if all of them have a little bit of evaporative leak, it's going to have an effect on the atmosphere and the air we breathe.
right, so that's the goal. Is they're trying to keep the fumes from escaping into the atmosphere.
Exactly, and people didn't want to change their gas caps. I'm really not sure what the theory was on putting these capless, filler necks on these things, but they can also crack lower down. It's not even at the flap. It's something that's visible.
Yeah.
So again, what kind of procedure do we have to do to find out where the leak is, Dave?
Well, we have a smoke machine.
Oh, what are you smoking?
Oh, yeah. That's, yeah.
What kind of smoke you blowing through there, man?
Cheech and Chong, man.
Oh,
you remember when they got out of the van
man.
and all that
Check
smoke
out
rolled
the
out?
smoke,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah, we actually have a smoke machine. What we do is we
Is it
basically...
Michoacan, man? Look at it, it's Michoacan.
It's Maui Wowie. No. So we hook a smoke machine up to it, and we look for where the smoke comes out. That's where it kind of tells us where the leak is.
All right. And is it always a leak? Sometimes the hose can be popped off underneath the hood that's used in the evaporative system. Many of them have,
Well, yeah, but it's still a leak.
purge valves and purge pumps,
Right.
And so it may not show a leak, though, if a vacuum hose is off that operates the thing. So some of those things are actually created by other things rather than leaks. It's a vacuum leak, but it's not.
Well, there is some vacuum valves and stuff like that in there. Is that
Yes.
what you're talking about?
Yeah, so if someone takes off the air cleaner on a Toyota Camry or something like that, and one of the hoses comes off and they don't notice it, it's going to throw a code for evap.
Oh, yeah.
Even though there's no leaks, no cracks, no nothing like that, someone left the hose off. So the code's got to be cleared, and if an inexperienced tech either did the problem and caused the damage by disconnecting a hose inadvertently without realizing it and putting it back, the other side of that, a smoke machine isn't gonna show that. It needs an experienced tech who knows, oh, this is a Toyota product, and maybe, of course, they'd be limited all that, but we're talking about mid 2000s to early 2000s, that was a very common thing. Somebody go change an air filter on their own car, do it yourself. The next thing you know, they got a hose off to go to emissions and they fail.
Yeah. Yeah, so the littlest things can cause the biggest problems.
I like
And
the smoke part though,
yeah,
man.
the
You know, like the
smoking part.
smoke.
So what else we got? Oh,
Whoa.
that's a filthy air filter. That's just
I
not
think
good.
someone dragged that through I don't know what, a
No,
mud
I
pile,
don't know. I
greasy.
don't know that this air filter is going to cause you to fail emissions. I don't think so.
You know the greasy, grimy golfer guts, mutilated monkey butts? That's what that looks like.
Yeah, and the biggest problem with that though is if that stuff gets through the air filter and gets into the sensors, that could be like an airflow meter, or airflow sensor, or it could cause some problems.
This is just a filthy, filthy air filter. So, Dave, how often should people change their air filters?
Well, they should check them every time they get the oil changed.
Okay, and if you're a do-it-yourselfer, and you know,
You should check. You should
or if you
check
go to
oil
a place
filters.
that doesn't bother checking the air filter because it's not a reliable service place that does it, and they just change your oil. There's a place now called 5-minute oil change. You sit in your car. You drive your car through, you select from a menu what oil you want, what filter you want, the grade of oil that you want. They don't tell you what you should have. They let you select it all. It's like going to Burger King, would you like fries, or would you like a double meat, their goal is to get you out the door in 5 minutes. So
I don't know how that's
some
possible.
some air filters by themselves take 20 or 30 minutes to do.
Yeah.
Like a Volkswagen, you got to tear the whole thing. There's 16 screws that hold this thing up, and to take it apart, and you can't see in it. So you got to actually take it apart. You got to dissect this thing like a frog, to try to figure out whether the air filter is dirty. So the point is that they don't get checked often enough, and that's for sure, because we find cars in all the time that look like this picture. It looks like it was dragged through mud and someone smeared grease in it and then put a bunch of bird feathers on it. So I mean, that's someone who either has been doing oil changes in their own garage, don't think about anything but the oil in the filter. And then there's another filter inside of the dash, and what is it called?
The cabin air filter.
What does it do?
Well, it filters the air going into your face when you turn the air conditioning and heating on. But you brought up a good point with the air filter. The thing of it is how often should you check your air filter? It depends on what you do. If you drive down a dirt road every day, you probably need to check that a little bit more.
Yeah, every oil change. Change. Otherwise, it's 15,000 miles is the normal rule.
Well, I just I'm under the rule that we check it every time you bring your car in for an oil change.
Absolutely.
Because we
don't know how many miles you've driven if you've never been in before.
Right,
So
and
you gotta
also
check 'em
too,
every
even
time.
if you're a regular customer, we don't know what you did. You might have went out four-wheeling one day or got in the middle of a dust storm and sucked a bunch of dirt into that filter. So we don't want to assume anything. So you want to make sure you get it checked.
Right.
Every oil change.
And what about aftermarket air filters? What do you think about those?
Well, it depends. There's different grades of aftermarket air filters. There's a really, really cheap one, and we've even seen them where they've actually been so cheap that they've actually caved in when they caved into the air filter housing where they caused a running problem because the car was not getting enough air.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people put aftermarket air filters and they put in what they call cold air, ducts and stuff like that. They're down lower, so they're pulling in cooler air, so the engine performs better, supposedly. I mean, if you got an engine that's 5 or 6 or 1,100 horsepower, then maybe that's true. But if you got a Toyota Camry 4-cylinder or a Corolla or something, and you put a cold air snorkel on there,
I got a funny story about that.
You're not going to gain a half a horsepower on that deal.
Well, and I had a customer that came into the shop with a cold air. Actually, the car was towed into my shop. I'd been at 4 other shops, and the car, what happened is he was driving down the freeway and the elbow came off of the old cold air tube and it blew apart. So he put it back together, and ever since that happened, his car's not ran right, and it had a big problem, and just was stumbling, and it was causing all kinds of problems. So we went ahead and looked at the car. What we figured out was that this particular cold air tube had another sleeve inside of it. It was called an airflow regulator. It was just a plastic little cone, and it fit inside there.
Invented by the cone heads.
And
right?
The bad part about it, it should have been part of the housing, but they made it a separate part of the housing. And so when it came apart, it blew out of there, and the customer saw it, but it was broken, so he just threw it away thinking nothing of it. That was a very important piece of that cold air tube.
Sure.
So if you do ever buy a cold air tube, you better make sure that you know all the pieces that go into it. And when something does come apart, make sure you tell your service advisor, technician, you'd let them know that, hey, that piece did come out of there and you need to look at it, because that may be an important piece. Even though you don't think it might be an important piece, it was in this case. It would have saved him all kinds of anguish. He went to 4 different shops to figure this out. So.
Yeah, and paid him money to try to diagnose it. So another episode I'll tell you about is someone had a cold air intake, and it was down low, and they drove through some pretty deep water that they shouldn't have driven through, and they actually hydrolocked their motor. It sucked water in, locked up the motor, and in one case it blew the motor up, and in 2 other cases that we've seen, we were able to actually take the spark plugs out and turn the engine over and pump the water out.
You were lucky.
Literally pump the water
You were
out
lucky.
of the engine, and they were okay.
Yeah, you were lucky on those ones, because we've had them too, where they had locked the motor and bent rods, and it causes all kinds of problems. So, what else we got?
Buyer beware.
Spark plugs.
My.
Boy, those have changed over the years, huh? We used to change them every 30,000. Now they go 100, 120.
Actually, when I was growing up, it was actually every 15,000 miles. And you were lucky if they lasted that long, because the engines ran so poorly that the carbureted engines, they'd foul up sometimes in 5,000 miles. So, yeah, the rule of thumb used to be 15, then it went to 30. And now it's 100,000 miles on these late model cars. And sometimes you pull them out and they still look like they'd last for another 20 or 30,000. It's crazy.
I know in some of the Fords you had a problem with, if you left them in there too long, they would actually
weld themselves into the cylinder heads. Yeah.
And so that was people were changing them earlier, not because the plug was worn out. They were just changing them earlier because they didn't want them to seize themselves into the engine block. And then you'd have to tap them out and put new threads in there. It was a heck of a job. So, spark plugs are usually, it'll cause some sort of a running problem. It'll check engine light if you end up with a misfire. Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you have a misfire, it's going to definitely kick your check engine light on.
Yeah, well, I mean, spark plug, the porcelains can crack, or you can have a misfiring coil or a spark plug wire, and it'll start putting a track down the side of the porcelain on the outside, and it'll short it out to the metal part on the spark plug, and you'll get a misfire. The problem wasn't necessarily the plug, and sometimes the plugs will crack. Yeah. And sometimes people misinstall plugs, and they'll tighten them so tight that they crack the porcelain. And they got a misfire right from the get-go, from the first turn of the keys. So, again, knowing how to do this and,
that's one of the reasons,
right.
That's one of the reasons why they put the foam inside the socket, to help you from not getting that socket to smack against that porcelain, like you said, and break it.
Yeah, the porcelain part is the insulator, so if that's not there, it not only absorbs heat, but it keeps the arc inside of the plug where it belongs.
If it gets outside, you lose spark. Absolutely.
Misfire.
Well, Glenn, one of the things we talked a lot about the emissions and what you do and what you don't do, but one of the things that we were talking about a little earlier is that if you go in there and you don't run the monitors, let's say the monitors don't run, what is the emissions people going to tell you?
They're going to tell you need to go drive the car some more and figure it out. The problem is, well, I drove the car 300 miles. I've had people tell me, I've driven it 300 miles, I've driven it 500 miles, and I still can't get this monitor to run. And it's not just how many miles you drive the car, it's how you drive it. So when I drive monitors, for instance, I have to drive 3/4 acceleration up to 45 to 50 miles an hour. Then for about 10 miles, I got to drive this car at 50, 55 miles an hour.
It's a procedure.
Yeah, it's a procedure. And that fits the glove for most vehicles. Hyundais and Kias are particularly hard to get to run monitors. And I mean, you got to pull over, you got to decelerate down to 40 miles, from 40 miles an hour down to 0 without touching the brake, and then sit there for 4 minutes, then restart the car, not restart it, you don't shut the car off, then you have to reaccelerate up to a certain amount. It is so complicated. It's like you almost have to be a rock star, and you have to be on a road all by yourself. Might as well take it to the Bonneville Salt Flats where there's nobody else driving.
Right, and I will, if let's say your battery goes dead on your car. If your battery goes dead and you have to change your battery out, a lot of times what will happen is it'll clear the codes, it'll clear all the monitors out of there.
And then you
it'll
think, everything's okay. I'll take it to emissions.
Right. It's not that easy. It's what's going to happen is you're not going to, those monitors are not going to run, and they're going
to start from 0.
They're going to tell you that the monitors haven't run. You need to put more miles on it and go through the process that Glenn said in order to get the monitors to run. And so that's very important, number one. Number two, if your check engine light is on, your car is not going to pass emissions. So you got 2 choices at that point. You can go down there and you can fail. And what we recommend, since we are part of that VVR, the Vehicle Emissions Repair Program, you have to go down, and I'll explain that process really quick. You have to go down to the emission station, you have to fail, and then you have to bring it to one of the, there's probably like 20 or 30 shops on their list that are part of this program. And what that means is you'll come to us, and then we'll enroll you in the program, and then they will pay up to $900 of the repair. You're responsible for the first $125, and then after that they'll pay $900, and then you're responsible for anything over that. It's a great program. It's been really helpful for a lot of people that have some older cars, sometimes even newer cars. It doesn't matter. But if you're in a pinch for money, it's a great program. So you can definitely talk to any emission stations about that, and they'll direct you where to go. So we recommend that you go down there and you fail, and then come to us, and we'll enroll you in the program, and we'll get your car fixed for you. Now, if you're not interested in that program, then probably the best thing for you to do is go down to any shop and have them look over the car and get that check engine light to go out and get all the monitors to run.
Right. That's the final step. If the shop you're going to says, okay, your light's out now, go drive your car, and they didn't fix what was wrong, that light is going to come back on. So it really should be incumbent upon them to drive the vehicle and drive the monitors, and even take it. We even take them to emissions.
We do
for
too.
people.
Yes, absolutely.
We prove to them, here's the sheet, you passed emissions, congratulations, that'll be $10,000. Okay, it's not
Plus
$10,000.
tax. And one of the things is that I guess the wrap up here is that number one, if you have an emissions problem, take it to a professional, get it checked out, and get it corrected, fix it, get your car checked out, and get it repaired correctly.
Right. That's part of it. And the other part of it is, okay, after it's done, are you going to guarantee me that I'm going to pass emissions? And in our cases, in the cases of our shops, yes, we're going to take it to the emission stations for you. Now, that takes a huge burden off of some soccer mom, or someone's got to pick her kids up at school, or busy two parents working, and you've got their car. We're going to take it there for you. That gives them the peace of mind of knowing, well, these guys are taking the responsibility, number one. Two, they're taking the time to do it to prove that they fixed my car when I spent X amount of dollars to get it fixed. So it's a big deal. So make sure that, whatever is done, that the shop is going to take the responsibility of getting it through emissions, and, also giving you a great warranty in the event that, something goes awry in the next couple of years.
Getting the car through emissions and getting it completed, giving that customer that compliance sheet so they can get their tags and get their car registered is a huge plus for the clients.
The proof is in the pudding. I mean, if you did it and it is passed, and we should be able to take it over there and get it taken care of.
Right, and we offer that service too, and it's a great service.
Satisfaction.
Yep, obviously, that's soup to nuts, man. We do it all. We get the whole car through, get it handled, and try to save you money in the process.
Absolutely. Thanks again for joining us.
Yeah, it's another wrap, man. Great talking about the emissions, and it's been a great show.
Hey, we'll talk to you next episode.